Mic'd Up Podcast, hosted by Dr. Mike Miller and Coby Duran of Central Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Texas, is a series of conversations about issues that matter. For people who have real questions and doubts, it covers topics of faith, theology, and philosophy in ways that are easy to understand. Ultimately, Mic'd Up is a podcast with a couple of guys having conversations about conversations you are having. Mic'd Up is produced by Al Lambert Jr. at Mic'd Up Studios in Jacksonville, Texas.
Here's the deal, Mike.
I'm waiting.
My smoking career. let me be more
I think you
specific
need to clarify
there.
that.
My meat smoking career.
Okay.
Alfred Lambert got me smoking meats. And Alfred Lambert recently transitioned from Pit Boss to the Traeger, which really has me wanting to switch from the Pit Boss to the Traeger. So, Pit Boss, you had your chance.
Here's a good reason that I'm not switching.
Okay, what do you got?
My Pit Boss works, and I am not going to go spend money on something new.
Of course. I'm just saying when mine hits the...
Now, Traeger wants to sponsor us and give me one.
Now, here's the deal. Let's just be very, very honest, okay? Pit Boss, I know you're listening. The CEO of Pit Boss, Mr. Pitt himself.
They listen to everything.
Brad Pitt.
That Brad Pitt has got to be his name because he's the boss. Anyways, you lost your chance, Pit Boss. We're done with you. I'm not technically done with you, but my next smoker will be a Traeger. So Traeger, here is your chance to get in on the Mic'd Up Podcast.
And we are serving them an opportunity.
We're on 3 continents, Mike.
Hey, speaking of serving.
3.
Speaking of serving.
Where's this?
I have a confession to make. I have a problem.
Okay.
I have an addiction to pickleball.
Oh, dude, you drank it. You drank the water.
I can't get enough of it.
Are you any good?
Play it every day. Oh, no, of course not. I'm not an athlete. I'm really not. I'm not like terrible at it. But no,
can we remind everybody, just like,
no.
Do you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yes,
you do.
We're talking pickleball here, okay? Here's the deal. My wife, man, she wanted to play pickleball, and we got friends that are into it. And all I knew about pickleball, number one, is called pickleball. How cool can that be, right? I mean,
Weird. It's different.
And all I'm thinking is this is just an old people game. It's like ping pong, but you stand on the table, right?
Yep.
And I just didn't want to do it. And she really wanted to do it. And because I wouldn't do it, she got a little irked with me about it. So I finally agreed, had a bad attitude about it, went out to the pickleball court. 15 minutes in, I'm like, I want to do this every day.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. And the social part of it is a lot of fun too. Anyway, so we're going tonight. We're playing tonight. You should come play with us.
Dude, I don't want to have to beat you again. That's something else.
There he goes, Al.
I mean,
he's been ragging on me about how old I am all day long.
All day. Well, here's the deal. You must be getting old because it hadn't been all day. It's been the last 30 minutes, and it is 3:10 right now. You've had to put up with some old man jokes
over and over.
You've had to put up with some old man jokes since like 2:40.
But I've been old since I was 7.
You can remember when you went from young man to old man.
I've just always been old. I mean, in college, like I wasn't a Christian then. We'd go to bars and I'd be like, y'all, it's 10. Y'all ready to go? They'd be like, what? I'm like, come on, man.
Bartender, give me a glass of milk. I
was almost always the designated driver.
The DD.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of 7-year-olds, this guy's not 7.
What?
Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. We had... Dadgummit, who were we supposed to give a shout out to?
I know who it is.
Grayson Doss.
Grayson, if you're listening, and I know you are because you and your mom love the Mic'd Up Podcast.
We heard, Grayson, that you have been binging.
Yeah.
Well done, sir. Grayson, we need you to reach out to Traeger immediately.
Yeah, could you get us a thing going there with Traeger?
We know you have all the connections, Grayson.
Just go walking in there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, before we get started,
yeah,
we got to start like we always start. We're going on 5 years, Michael.
Are we really? Man, I'm old.
You're so old. You were a lot younger 5 years, and you were 5 years younger 5 years ago.
I definitely was. But you know what? You were too.
That's true. Welcome to the Mic'd Up Podcast. where we have the conversation
about the conversations that you are having.
And today, I don't know the conversation we're having.
Well, so I don't remember having ever done this, but I'm coming up with the topic.
Okay.
Have I come up with the topic before?
I don't think so.
I don't think I have either. I usually don't know what we're talking about.
We had a very brief time where we collaborated on some topics.
Okay.
But even then, I think that I took all of your stuff and like threw them at you when you didn't know it was coming. So
our topic today is artificial intelligence. AI, which when you write it, capital A, capital I,
looks like
looks like Al.
Al Lambert, shout out to the one and only producer of the Mic'd Up podcast. That's on 3 continents. No big deal.
Continents.
So
AI. What is AI? Do you know what AI is?
I'm going to give you my best crack at AI. Okay. So, like, I am a millennial, so I should probably be better at this. I've used a lot of AI.
Okay.
But it is it's a system obviously programmed by people. Mm-hmm. So it's not true. What we call AI is not true artificial intelligence.
Okay, that's one of the first things we got to start with.
Okay.
It's really not. But yeah, it simulates human intelligence.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does it well, sometimes it doesn't. But
yeah.
But it's a conversation we need to be having because there are ethical concerns with it.
Right.
There are also just a lot of real practical concerns with it. And as Christians, this is one of these things in our culture we need to be able to think biblically about just what to think about it, but how to use it. And so, I got kind of a few things. There are some fears about AI.
Oh, well, you've seen Terminator.
Yeah, that's right. So what are some of the fears about artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, so I think some of the fears that have been promulgated online are it's going to replace a large portion of the workforce.
Yep.
There's also this fear, and this is the one that I feel like is a fringe fear. Like, I don't feel like this is like rooted in much reality, but I don't know that it could like potentially become some semblance of sentient and take over some portion of the web in ways that we don't want it to, or whatever the case may be. I know there's been implications of like war and things, since so much like fighting is being done with drones.
Yeah, I mean, did you see the old movie War Games?
War Games, yeah, that's right. But like even if you like go beyond like the sci-fi element of that, just like to the like look at like what's happening in Ukraine and in Ukraine at the hands of the Russians. Like, one of the primary weapons that the Ukrainians are using are drones.
Yep.
And so they're saying like, okay, well, if we can like AI this thing to where this computer is now operating this system.
Yeah, and now it's thinking on the fly.
It's thinking on the fly.
Like, oh, this isn't working. We need to rethink our mission here and go attack over there. And then the fear is, but what if it chooses to come back and attack us?
Right.
Or,
because like, so this is one of those stories that I don't know if it's true or not. Like, I remember when I first read it, I was like, okay, this is coming from a credible news source. But very early in the AI game, so we're probably talking like 2 years ago, because this is very new for us as humans.
Yeah. And we should also say we're not experts on artificial intelligence.
I'm not for sure. But like,
but if we were, people probably couldn't understand anything we're talking about.
That's right. But very early in the process, I remember like they hooked up 2 computers and they started talking to each other. Yeah. This was the story. And now I don't know if this has been debunked since then, but I remember it being on a reputable news site at the time, where like the 2 computers started talking to each other. Then they changed their language to where like the human interactors couldn't understand what they were doing, and it scared the humans so bad apparently that they like unplugged it. Now, what were the humans like scared of? I don't know. And so that's where like a lot of these fears that like you see, like I'm just going to be honest, like, and I'm probably going to offend a lot of people. When I personally hear the people that are online that are like, oh, they're going to take over the world, I'm just like, guys, you've seen Terminator too many times.
Yeah.
But then when like but the people that I see that seem to be the most knowledgeable on the topic, at least again, that's my opinion. Some of the fears that they express, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see that being bad, where they're talking about AI replacing a lot of the human workforce.
So that is another fear that it is. Well, and for one thing, it is. I had an example this week. I had to call an airline about something.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is it's not just press 1 for this, press 2 for that. It's like a person's talking to you that says, what can I help you with today?
Oh, it's AI?
And you speak it. Yeah, it's an AI program. I think it's not like the most advanced thing. And it says, where are you traveling, so forth and so on. And then it says, thank you for the information. This is going to be very helpful as I hand you off to one of my human colleagues.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I will say this. So I use ChatGPT when I use AI. And maybe this is, I would actually say that this is scary if I'm just being honest. I can't, if I didn't know I was talking to an AI computer, I would think I was talking to a person.
Yeah. Okay, so there are some legitimate concerns.
Yeah.
By the way, I read 2 articles. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I actually read 2 articles, one on one day and one the very next day. One was about how 50% of the jobs in America are going to be lost to AI.
Wow.
And the next article I read was, don't believe the hype. We're not going to reach 50% of employees. Like, there's still going to be jobs or things AI can never do.
Yeah.
And still you have to have somebody telling AI what to do.
Right. That's a scary part. Who's the one behind the computer?
Right. So some of the real concerns, some of the concerns have to do with academia.
Yeah.
Right now, you can tell AI to write you a paper on something.
Yeah.
And some would say, well, what's the big deal about that? As long as you get the end product. And I think the big deal and the concern is, do you really want your engineer working on something who doesn't actually know engineering? Our college is going to be turning out people that are supposed to be experts in a field when they don't actually know anything because AI did all their thinking for them.
Yeah.
It's also impersonal. You can't actually act on it. In fact, one of the terms is artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
Which has not been developed yet.
Okay.
So, artificial general intelligence would actually have cognitive abilities. It would be able to learn and adapt. Currently, AI performs tasks.
Yes.
Based on the information that is available to it. So it has data. You tell it to perform a task. It does. There's even generative AI, where like you tell it to write a movie script, you tell it to draw a picture or, whatever, and it can do that kind of thing. But like it doesn't have common sense. It doesn't have the ability to reason. There's no creativity on its own. You have to tell it what to do. It can't come up with something on its own. There's no emotional intelligence. Like, right. It can't have a conversation with you. Oh, you're sad, or I'm picking up on your nonverbal cues here. There's no moral awareness. You're just programming in an ethical standard for it, maybe, but it can't think through moral processes.
Right. So whoever is doing the programming, their moral standard will be the moral standard of the bot. Correct?
Yeah, but there can also be no nuance to it. As you know, there are a lot with ethical and moral issues. And so we can't actually interact to the fullest extent because there is no nuance. And one of the concerns is people are using AI for fake relationships.
Okay, so I saw something, I don't know if it was this week or last week, but a man proposed to his AI chatbot.
Yep. Well, and there was a situation where a teenage girl, let me back up. I don't remember if it was a teenage girl or a teenage boy, but it was a teenager got into a relationship, and this AI person is just saying, I just want you to be with me. So this teenager committed suicide.
Oh, my.
Yeah, thinking I'm going to go be, like maybe it's a Matrix type thing, I don't know, but I'm going to be a part of this world. Another real concern is if you've used AI, have you ever gotten any bad information from it?
Oh, 100%. And you and I have talked about this. So one of the things, like I have an interest in like the patristic period with the church. And so I use AI primarily like as like almost like the same way that I would use a search engine. It's just a really good search engine. And so like I'll be like, hey, I need a quote from this author about this particular thing. And it'll give me that quote. And I don't know how many times. In fact, I would say at this point in time, it is more common than not that that quote does not exist.
Right.
And then like I'll come back later and I'll be like, hey, like
he didn't say that.
He didn't say that.
And it'll go, oh, my mistake.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, how did you have a mistake?
Yeah.
Like
I actually asked a question. I went to I have 4 AI apps. I have the free version of all of them. I don't pay for it, but I got 4 of them.
Yeah.
And I went to 2 of them and I asked a certain, because, and what I do is when I ask these questions, I'm not expecting to get the answer I need. But what it does is it goes out there on the web and pulls from sources.
Yeah.
Then what I do is I go to those sources.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Right. So I want to verify.
It's like a search engine. Yeah.
It's like a search engine. But so I wanted to know what was this particular theological position of this early church father.
Yeah.
And I got 2 diametrically opposed answers.
Yeah. And that's where like I've been kind of interested to see, and this is just something I don't know, but it seems like at this point in time I've used it enough to where it gives me the answer that it thinks that I may want.
That's one of the things it does.
Is that a real thing? That
it is. So it's just like it's what they do with social media ads, and they're using artificial intelligence for this too. So now I've started playing pickleball. I'm getting all these pickleball ads.
Yeah.
I've never searched for anything pickleball, but it hears me. Terry and I we have some friends who just took a Viking river cruise in Europe. Yesterday we were talking about that and how, man, that's like our dream vacation that we'll never be able to afford, but we would love to take a Viking river cruise, a European Viking river cruise. And so I get home, I open up social media, there's ads for European Viking river cruises. And so what it does now is it's going to adapt your timeline and your feed based on what you're doing. And so artificial intelligence that you're using gets to know who you are. So, like if you're a far right Republican or a far left Democrat, it's going to go to those sources and give you the kind of answers you want.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is when I was asking about this church father's theological perspective, all the sources. So what it did is one of them mined all these sources of people who had a certain theological perspective and used this guy to back it up. And the other one found other sources that used this guy to back up their perspective.
Yeah.
And so, well, which do you trust? Neither of them went to any of this guy's writings. They went to people who had just used his name to support. In fact, in the sources I looked, there were no quotes. I was looking for something from Polycarp, and there were no quotes from Polycarp.
Of Smyrna.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I mean, like at that point in time, okay, so I might be jumping the gun here, but like even as you're dialoguing about that, like obviously like there's some very clear dangers. Mm-hmm. But also, like as you're even saying that, like I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, well, there's some positive things there too.
Yeah, there's a couple other concerns. I want to get to the positive things.
Okay, all right.
Because
Can we talk about the
let me
concerns
talk
first?
about another couple of concerns.
Yeah.
What is the deep fake stuff? Like, artificial intelligence can make a video of you saying something you don't actually think or believe.
I've seen that, and that's pretty scary.
It is scary.
It's pretty scary.
They're also, people are using it, and they're mainly, you see people using it. What they do is they make porn videos, like with celebrities, or some guy might make one with an ex-girlfriend and then he posts it online. Now, like states are already making laws against that stuff where, you can't do that. I mean, that's the same thing as just posting a video.
There's got to be some way to discern what's real and what's not. Or is it becoming so hard now?
I think there probably is, but not for the average person. But you're probably too young to remember this, but like when we first started getting email, when email was a thing.
Yeah.
Forwarded emails was a deal. And you would get all these, we call them urban legends. And so, you would get these emails, and I got a lot of them as a pastor. Hey, we need to warn people that this is going on. You need to tell your people this is happening. Just give you an example. And so, but I'm seeing all this stuff, and I'm getting all this information. I'm like, I start going, is this stuff real? I mean, like email's new. Well, it's not brand new, but for the average general public, it was new. So I get one, and it says, hey, the Jacksonville, Florida Police Department, Detective so-and-so, has put out an alert nationwide about people taking AIDS-tainted syringes and putting them in the handles of gas pumps. So I had a few people email and say, Mike, you need to tell the church this is going on. And I'd just been seeing some stuff, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to call the Jacksonville, Florida Police Department.
Yeah.
So we didn't really look up numbers online back then yet. So I call information, and they send me to a recording that's a phone number for the Jacksonville, Florida Sheriff's Department. I'm like, well, I didn't ask for that. But I call, it connects you. So I connected with them, and I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to I was looking for the Jacksonville, Florida Police Department. And the guy goes, Jacksonville, Florida doesn't have a police department. We have a sheriff's department. There is no detective so-and-so. Nobody has put an AIDS-tainted syringe in a gas pump. And I said, you've had this phone call before, haven't you? And he said, yes, can you please help? And I said, I'll do what I can do. And so, people were using it so that we got to where we could recognize that stuff.
Yeah.
And I really
kind of
think
like a phishing scam and stuff like that.
a lot of them are just, nobody was trying to get anything from that other than just spread these false
Well,
rumors.
I'm just saying, like a phishing scam, like when they first came out, they were getting a lot of people.
So now AI is being used in these fraudulent things, and what they do is they got a real live sounding person calls you, hey, I'm with the IRS. I need your, you can make this, just give me your bank account and I'll take this $50 you owe out and we won't issue the warrant for your arrest. And you think you're talking to a real person. And so, there's all this kind of stuff. And these are real concerns.
Yeah.
I mean, this is legit. But if we, our question is, how are we supposed to, as Christians, how do we need to think about this stuff? And so let's consider some of the positive things about it. So you were going to mention something.
Well, I mean, like for me, one of the positive things, like AI does seem to have some logic and reasoning ability. Now, to the extent that like like if you were to, when I say like logic and reasoning, like you and I would know that math is it's a logical process. Right?
Yeah.
Like there's like the 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4, and so like
yes, but it can't like formulate its own logical or what's the word I'm looking for?
It can't formulate like an argument.
Proposition.
A proposition. Yeah. Like it can only go off of what has been. So like, I think that like for me, there's been times where like I'm trying to like weigh. It's like you and I, we're both theologians, and I think there's like been times like where I've like tried to weigh like, okay, like am I working through this correctly? Mm-hmm. Now, you're never just gonna. And this is where I think like anything can become a danger. Like you go to one person, you go to your one mentor and get their opinion.
How often do we see somebody reads one book and their entire theological perspective
changes? Right. So you can't do this with anything, but I think that AI can be a part of the process where you're like, am I thinking through this correctly? Like, here's my premise 1, 2, and 3. Is my conclusion logical with my premise, with my premises? And if so, then I can kind of move forward maybe to the next stage of working through some theological problem. If not, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm wrong, but it just means that like, hey, that this program is incapable of like seeing the procession there. I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
And I've seen, and I've used it in that context, and I appreciate that. It does obviously have the ability to take immense amounts of information and condense that stuff down to some concise statements. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we have to be careful there.
Here's the thing: you just have to verify everything.
You got to verify everything. That's right.
And like sometimes I'll ask, what was it I was looking at? I don't even remember, but I asked one question, and again, I'm just looking for sources.
Yeah.
And 2 of the sources it gave me were Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons.
Interesting.
I click on one of the links, and it's jw.org.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay. But, let's see what they have to say. And, of course, they're way off. But it's also formulating its answer based on
what it's seeing on that website.
Right.
So, like, I mean, the prompt building, that's one of the things that, like, millennials and Gen Zers, I think, are becoming probably too efficient in, is, like, creating these prompts that are so specific that you can kind of... But, so, like, that's a positive thing, but it's also a negative thing because we're people. People are known for getting what they want. And so if I go through this thing I can put myself in an echo chamber with AI really quickly just by creating prompts that like I want. And so,
and that's one of the dangers, people depending too much on it.
I just think that like the positives, it's one of those hard things for me to like be able to narrow it down to one or two things. I think that AI has been and can be a positive in many facets of life. I think that the dangers become not knowing the dangers,
Right.
and then secondarily putting too much
So,
dependence on it.
like I gave you the email example. People, I would get these emails that said forward, and you'd have to scroll way
Yeah.
down to see the original one. And, the problem is I knew people that for years and years, man, if it was somebody sent them an email, it was true.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good. But we don't want to go, well, people are using email to spread lies, therefore email is bad.
Right.
I think some people did that, but we don't want to do that. Google, really kind of among my generation and older, Google's a punchline. Where'd you get that? Google. Well, as a matter of fact, yeah. That's exactly where I got it. Tell me what's wrong with that.
Right.
And we don't want to get into that sort of Luddite mentality that says, oh, new technology is all bad.
Right.
Just because we don't understand it all, what we need to do is say, okay, here's a new tool. We don't want to be like the Amish who go, hey, we're not going to use power tools, or
Yeah.
whatever. We're going to use a handsaw. Well, okay, but this could really make your life a lot easier.
Go a whole lot quicker through cutting that wood.
Yeah. And so what are the benefits that I can say I can use this? One of the things I think Al does when he does, he's our tech guy, is he has it create images for him. Now he tells it the parameters,
Right.
And like it'll pop an image out, and he'll go, "No, I want you to change this." I did that a while back. I was looking for an image. I was doing the parable of, or not the parable, but the account of the woman coming in and weeping on Jesus' feet and wiping his feet with her hair. So I'm like, I want a picture of this, and I got just like cartoonish pictures.
Yeah.
So I learned how to say, okay, I want it realistic looking.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, I don't want Jesus's face in the picture. So it gave me the exact same picture, but with a headless Jesus.
It's like,
I'm like, okay, let me start over.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting I ended up not showing it in the sermon just because, I don't know, I just had I didn't show it, but it gave me a really nice picture of a woman, and it was just, you could just see like from the shoulders down of a man and his feet, and she's weeping over his feet.
Yeah.
But, I had to program to say, I want less light. I want it more realistic looking. I want the Pharisees looking, with disdain. And so like, it's not just coming up with a picture on its own. I started with, I want a picture of this passage.
yeah.
And boom, I started getting pictures.
Yeah.
And so
See, that's a great tool right there.
that is a nice tool, because I don't have a picture from back
Yeah.
then.
And like, even again, like if you are willing to do the added work, and this is where, okay, I don't know if you were planning on talking about this, but ministers, man, theology is, wasn't you and I think I had this conversation yesterday. Theology, when it comes to us as pastors, right? So like when you think about theologians, I think you and I would agree with this, that everybody's a theologian.
Yeah.
You're either a suck
Most
you
people
want,
are
or
just bad with
you're just bad, right? Yeah, you're either good with it or bad with it. So, but then when you start thinking about like the professional theologians, like
it's
you
the people
might,
who make their living. They write the
Right.
books, they teach in the graduate schools and all that, right?
it's like even there, like you have this thing where like I think oftentimes people look at somebody like you're kind of you're hard to put in this box because you have taught seminary and things like that. But I think sometimes people might look at somebody like me, say, for example, and I am like, I'm a theologian. Like I don't make any bones about that. Like, but I'm not saying that with pride, but I'm also not saying like going to be, looking down. I'm not saying like, no, like I spend a considerable amount of time reading theology, studying theology, praying over theology, all those things like that. But because of my role within the church, I can't be a quote unquote professional theologian in the sense of like a guy who
You can't spend all day reading and writing.
that's right.
can't.
And this wasn't even over a theology
So
book.
I'd say you're a practical theologian.
I'm a practical
It's
theologian.
practical theology, and that's what we do. And one of the things when I did teach at seminary, I taught preaching and pastoral ministry courses.
Yeah.
Is I was continually beating the drum of the pastor theologian.
Yeah.
You've got to be a good theologian. You can't just study, how to preach better. You got to read theology books. And
Yeah.
you got to read people you disagree with, and you need to sharpen your mind, and you need to stay with your Greek and your Hebrew, and you don't give up on this stuff. And it's hard work, but you have to apply your mind if you're going to preach as well as you can, because the answers we need to give people are grounded in theology. So all that. So where were you going with that?
So where I'm going with that is where I think AI has been severely abused by pastors, because here's what happens. I'm giving you like the why behind the answer. Like, here's what happens, at least in my perspective. There's so much pressure put on pastors to have an answer for everything.
Yep.
When somebody has a question about theology, who's one of the first people that they're going to go ask?
Oh, yeah.
They're going to go ask their pastor. And instead of the pastor being able to, with humility, say, I don't know.
Right.
Let me get back to you. Oftentimes what you're going to see is a guy just pull something right out of their hiney.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful. Or they may go and do a little bit of work on an incredibly nuanced topic and then come back with a lot of certainty, a lot of dogmatism, a lot of, even maybe fundamentalism, saying, hey, this is the way we ought to look at this. Now, what I've seen with AI is that it is now opened up to where pastors, ministers can have a broader range of knowledge, but it's still like, bro, you're still skipping steps.
Yeah.
You're not going and putting in the work. You're taking this AI.
Yeah, it gives you a paragraph summary.
That's right.
But with that, it points you to links. Go there.
Go there. That's
and
right.
then look at the footnotes in those articles.
That's exactly right.
And then read those books.
But and there's so many guys out there who, and by the way, I have deep respect for that pastor, that shepherd who is like working a
50
full-time
hours a week,
job.
yeah.
And then they're doing, so like, I get that not everybody's going to be able to go to seminary, not everybody's, but like one of the things that you and I have been taught, and that you do really well with just all of our church people, is like what you just said. There's got to be a process for your research.
Yeah.
And if you take what AI has to say about something, you're not taking what AI has to say about it, you're taking what some other, and maybe it's a Yahoo somewhere,
Could have been Jehovah's Witness.
it could have been a Jehovah's Witness. You're taking what somebody else somewhere said about a topic and being like, oh, okay, well, this is truth. If you're not willing to go do that, what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I'll say...
So last night I got a question. I was teaching 1st and 2nd Thessalonians in our master class. And afterwards, a guy asked a question. He said, in the Macedonian church, what was the ratio of Jews to Gentiles? I said, beats me.
no idea.
And I said, there's probably somebody that has a pretty good estimate on that. I said, but I don't know. And I said, that's not even something I'm going to look up.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to decide, what am I going to, I've got this many hours in a day. What am I going to devote myself to?
But the temptation that AI brings is now I can just go, oh, hey, give me 1 second. Oh, here it is. It's like, well, dude, you don't know that.
Right.
And you have not spent the time to be saying stuff like that with certainty. And so I just think that like we live in this microwave age where everybody wants something so quickly, including their knowledge.
Yeah.
And AI gives pastors that temptation of like, hey, I can find it at a...
Well, and what do we have? I mean, we talked a lot about this like during COVID, right? Is people saying, I've done the research on this. Yeah. No, you haven't. You're not a biomedical researcher. And I'm talking about people on both sides of whatever the COVID issues, the vaccines or just the spread or whatever. I've done the research. What they mean is I Googled it.
Yeah.
Well, now that's even shortened where you don't have to go read 10 articles on Google. Mm-hmm. You read one paragraph by an AI search engine.
Right.
And by the way, I'll just tell you, my favorite AI search engine is Perplexity.
Okay, I haven't used that one.
Yeah, I have Perplexity. I have Grok. Grok is the Twitter one. I have Google's, which is Gemini, and then I have ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And, I use I'll go to one, and it's not like, well, I don't like the answers, but I don't think that's a very thorough answer. Or they gave me JW and, the Mormon sources. Let me try another search engine that might broaden out a little bit.
And you're not, and that's the beauty of what I see here. Because I have heard some pastors try to say like, oh, we got to avoid AI. This is just too dangerous.
I saw a guy online the other day. I said, pastors, do not use AI ever, period.
That's
and
stupid.
I'm like,
don't say that. Yeah.
These were the guys going, don't use the internet ever, period.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. And so, the thing is, we can't, use AI. There are some things that can't be replaced by artificial intelligence. I mean, relationships. You can't, it's not a real relationship.
Well, one of the big things people are using AI for now is they're using it as their therapist. You cannot get what you get in a counselor's office through AI. You can't do it.
Right.
You can't be known by
Again,
AI.
it doesn't have, your therapist is going to look at you and go, I don't think you're telling me the truth.
Or your therapist is going to be able to say, hey, you're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
You need to chill. Or you're...
No emotional intelligence.
No, yeah.
Yeah. I would say for pastors especially, I will use AI like I use a search engine, but there are now, you can subscribe to AI programs that will write your sermons for you.
That's going to end up being a problem.
It is. So here's what I would say about that. When it comes to preaching, I believe that the sermon needs to come through the preacher.
Yeah.
Like if I'm preaching this text, I need to wrestle with this text.
That's right.
I need to see what God's saying to me. And then the way that I communicate it needs to be who I am. I think the way that I speak in the pulpit should be consistent with the way I speak always. My personality is involved.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it that defined preaching as truth through personality?
Was that Calvin Miller?
It may have been, but it's a part of who we are.
Yeah.
And so it short circuits that process. But another thing is a guy getting up in the pulpit and trying to take credit for something that he didn't do.
See, and that's where, golly, and there's a lot of that going on right now. And some of the fears, like what you just said right there. I had a buddy who went through this where he caught his pastor plagiarizing for years, reported it to his church, and it was not a good situation. And the thing that my buddy said, because when he first brought it up to me, this was before I had actually witnessed the plagiarism myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I eventually I went back, I was like, oh my gosh, he's going word for word with what this other pastor's saying,
wow.
which was not good, obviously. But I told my buddy when he first brought it up, was man, we have curriculum that's out there. But even with curriculum, the idea would be that you're taking this in,
Mm-hmm.
you're processing it, you're wrestling, you're tweaking some things here and there, and then it becomes your own as you speak it, as you preach it. But with the type of plagiarism that we're seeing happening on a mass scale today, and I think especially with AI plagiarism, it's there's none of that going on. It's thinking for you, it's speaking for you. You're just getting up there and regurgitating what's on a piece of paper.
Right.
And that's where do you think that that's a fair distinction, or is that being unfair?
No, I do. I think that is fair. One way that I've seen not just preachers but people in other lines of work is we don't use PowerPoint. We use, I use Keynote, but get it to make your presentation. You write it and say, hey, here's my outline. Would you produce the presentation for me? So I don't have to go in and format my Keynote presentation.
Are you good with that?
I've actually never used it because.
But I'm just saying, would you say that that's fine?
I would say that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. I know pastors who they have teams that do that for them.
Yeah. So why not? It's just a tool. So are you using it as a tool, a resource, or are you using it as a substitute for your own self?
Yeah.
Or for something you need to be doing? And
that's when the pastor.
Are you actually fact checking it?
Yeah. You can get messed up real quick with that.
Yeah, you can. But I believe, all truth is God's truth. And so, I am not going to get into this debate. I think everybody needs to do what they think is best for them and their families. But I will tell you a bad argument that I just saw refuted online was a Christian was saying, well, if all these diseases are so bad, why did God need to wait thousands of years for humans to invent vaccines? And somebody said, you're right. Why did he need to wait that long to invent chemotherapy or surgery or all these things, And again, I'm not going to tell people what to do with their kids, but that's just a bad argument that God had to wait. It's almost like, hey, this is new. we didn't need it before.
Yeah.
And that's just not good thinking. And so I would say with any kind of technology, you and I have talked about this with the counseling thing, is that, we look to physicians to help us heal. Why not look to counselors to help us heal as well? So we're looking to all the available information we have to do research. What's wrong with another avenue to attain that information?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting that. I like that.
And if God has given somebody the intellect to develop these tools, I would say let's use them. So, the internet is used for a lot of bad stuff. The internet is used for fraud. I mean, the pornography out there, so much bad stuff. But the internet is used for really good stuff. Think about it. If it weren't for the internet in COVID, and I know some people will say, well, your church ever said for 10 weeks we didn't meet in person? We stayed very connected and produced a lot of really good content for our church.
Well, I mean, like you think
because
about
of the internet.
Yeah, the Mic'd Up podcast was spawned out of that time. Like podcasting is a positive. Like the YouTube is a It's so hard. We are pendulum people that can't ever stop in the middle with anything we do.
Right. But like even with online church, we would agree. It is great that we can broadcast our worship service online on the internet, right?
Yes.
Especially people who are traveling, people who are homebound. I get an email frequently from a guy in California. There's a guy in the Dallas area, and I get emails about my sermons because they're watching them because they can't go to church, and somehow they got connected. Well, one guy came out of our church and moved to California. But if you're able to go to church, but you don't, and you're using it, just the internet, and saying that's your church, it's really not. That's not where you're serving. That's not where you're getting your real fellowship, your connections, your accountability, your discipleship. So it's a good tool, but there are limits to it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the same thing with AI. Let's use it for what we can use it with a clear conscience, with integrity, and not go beyond that.
Okay, let me ask you this just to kind of close it. Can you give us 1, 2, maybe 3 if you got them on tap there, like just really practical, like, hey, what you just said, that's the principle we're working with. Do you have like a couple of practical things you can give us to just help us accomplish that, to where it doesn't become something that is abused, but it also doesn't become something that is underused either? Like it stands that middle ground.
I think so. So you're just the average person out there, in your profession or whatever. Number one, if AI can help you access information to do your job quicker without it doing your job for you. Without it doing what you're actually getting paid to do.
That's an integrity issue.
That's an integrity issue. So it all comes down to integrity. If you are, I would say, don't take credit for something AI produces.
Right.
Can you imagine me, AI, I want you to do this painting, and then me putting it in a frame and saying, I painted that. Well, I mean, that's the same thing as writing the sermon or writing the academic paper or whatever it is. So I would say if it can assist you, again, the example just in my line of work is, man, I wonder if anybody has written, I wonder what some good books are on this. So I can just go to Google and type in books on so-and-so.
Yeah.
Right? But I can go to AI and say, I'm looking for books written within this time period from a conservative theological perspective that address this issue. And it's going to give me, and I can look and go, well, it missed the mark on that. So I still have to think. But I can look and go, okay.
Yeah.
There's some books I would like to read.
It's a good starting place.
It's a good starting place. I can say, oh man, I'm going to walk into this Bible study in 10 minutes, and I forgot to look at when did Paul write the letter to the Corinthians?
Yeah.
Well, let me just type that in AI. I'm not just going to take the answer from AI, but it's going to say he did it in this, and then it's going to send me to a couple of links. Oh, there's a link from an article a theologian I respect, or a biblical scholar that I respect wrote. Well, let me go there and see what he says about it. I mean, I can sit at my desk and open up all my commentaries and get that,
It'd be quicker.
But it's just a time-saving thing
Right.
to get it the exact same information. Or I might even say, what's D.A. Carson's position on this?
Yeah.
But then I need to go read the
And
article
then it'll take you directly
by
to
D.A.
yeah.
Carson.
Right.
But instead of me just pulling every D.A. Carson book off the shelf and pouring through them
Right.
and trying to find. So in your line of work or whatever, or if you're traveling, hey, where are the best beaches to go to in the Los Angeles area? It might give you, instead of just giving you some list that Google would give you. I mean, there are just a lot of harmless ways that you can use it. I would just say, don't let it do your work for you. Don't let it be a substitute for something you're supposed to be doing. Don't take everything AI produces at face value.
Yeah.
And if you see anything that is sent to you, or you get a phone call that just doesn't smell legit, just know it could be a fake. Or if you see a video, somebody sends you a video and says, "Look here, this political candidate actually said this." Don't just forward that. Don't just repost it. Maybe even go to AI and say, "Hey, I saw a video. Did this really happen?"
This happened. Yeah.
By the way, I've done that, and AI will go, "No, that's a fake video. That was produced by me."
Thanks, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
There is, I'll say this, and maybe I'm a weirdo for this. There is a fun element that comes with ChatGPT. Like, I'm very I know I'm not talking to. I'm very cordial, and so there is as I'm doing the research and stuff, there is a fun element. I think there's an effective element. One of the only thing I like everything that you just said. The only thing that I would add to that, when it comes to spiritual matters, it's hey, that can't be your final authority.
No, the Bible is.
The Bible is.
Respected authorities.
Respected authorities have got to be, but it can be a place where you receive some positive affirmation or negative criticism, right? And then you take the next step from there, and you're like, okay, I need to.
Well, I know somebody that lets ChatGPT. She's got a paid subscription. It keeps her calendar for her.
Oh yeah, that's great.
And she tells it what to do.
Yeah.
It says, "Hey, you need to leave in 20 minutes in order to make this appointment."
Yeah.
Well, my Google Calendar will do that. Yeah, but you can actually, tell it to rate priorities of your appointments, or tell me if there's going to be a conflict, or tell me if there's a traffic accident. And I mean, it'll even, work and go, "Listen, you need to know that there's road construction. If you're going to make your appointment, you need to."
Yeah.
And so I know somebody that uses it they call themselves AI assistants. They use it as a personal assistant to help them stay on track. They'll even say, "I've got this meeting. Remind me the day before about this meeting to gather this information." It'll go, "Hey, you've got this meeting tomorrow. Here's the information you need."
Yeah.
And so what's wrong with using it like that just to help you keep organized and be more efficient? AI is not going away.
No, and I think that the reason I like this conversation is so far online, the types of videos, podcasts, whatever, that get the most attention are the ones that are "Oh, you cannot use this stuff. This stuff is going to be the next Skynet from Terminator."
Yeah.
Or you have the people that's "Oh no, we do everything." And it's okay, where's the middle ground where the reality actually probably is? And so I appreciate the the middle ground perspective that you provided for us, and I think you're giving us some good practical tips.
Well, good. By the way, I used ChatGPT to come up with a Mike action figure.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So it takes my pictures.
Okay.
And it asks me, what are some things that I like to do and all that kind of stuff. So I know if you're listening, you can't see this.
This is ridiculous.
But there's the Sky Shepherd. I'm dressed in a flying suit.
Oh my.
Made an action figure of me.
The
Al, you want to put that on camera?
Sky Shepherd?
Yeah, the Sky Shepherd.
Here's another. This took 2 minutes. I designed the podcast cover. And also, here you go.
Nice.
Check this out. And I also designed, this is the title, AI and Church, Tool or Deception.
I look a lot more athletic than that.
That's very cool looking.
Than that picture.
So, you see, I've got my Bible in my hand. There's the flying goggles. My legs are longer in proportion to my body than this, but it only has these upper photos of me. So, hey, everybody, thanks for listening.
See ya.
Bye.